Do you think Trump is trying to lose the war in Iran on purpose?
So, that's a really good question, and I think it's a very complicated question. So I want to break it down into parts, okay? So the first part I want to look at is what goes on in Trump's head. He believes in his heart he is on a mission from God to save America. That's literally what he believes. He believes every day when he's alone in the bedroom doing Twitter or watching Fox News, God is whispering in his ear. He feels he has a divine connection to God that no one else does. He feels that he's almost like Jesus, where he's on a secret messianic mission that only he understands, where no one else does. But that's the curse that he has to suffer in order to save America. That's what he believes, all right? And then the question then is, what's his mission then? If you just look at his rhetoric, if you look at his actions, he has a certain worldview, which is that America has been co-opted and corrupted by the transnational financial elite. Wall Street, the City of London, Bank of England, okay, Bank of National Settlements, okay, just the transnational capital. And as a result, America has lost its purity. America fought a revolution to get rid of these guys, right? And now they're back and they control the Federal Reserve. They control the military-industrial complex. And they control the deep state. It's all the same people, really. And so America is forced into these wars overseas. America is forced to allow illegal immigration, which dilutes the purity, the heritage, the culture of America. And without identity, without culture, without history, who are you? What are you? So then the question then is, okay, if you believe this, and you believe that only you can save America, how do you do so? Well, in his first term, he surrounded himself with generals. He surrounded himself with people who knew Washington, D.C. well. And he played by the rules. And what happened? They cheated him, right? 2020. He won that election, fair and square. The American people supported everything he did. He worked hard for America, and his entire cabinet betrayed him. The deep state spent $6 billion to rig that election, to steal it from him. And then they staged January 6th, which was a protest gone amok. But they called it an insurrection and they impeached him. And they tried to put him in jail, or at the very least, prevent him from ever standing for re-election again. They tried to destroy him. Then after he goes home to Mar-a-Lago, they raided his home. For what exactly? For having confidential information? Listen, in Washington, D.C., everything is confidential. If I give you a piece of paper that's not my name on it, it's confidential, right? And you take it home, well now you have a state secret sitting in your garage. Joe Biden had state secrets in his garage in Delaware, okay? Hillary Clinton had her own private email server. There was no FBI raid on their homes. Then you have lawfare against Donald Trump. You had like lawsuit after lawsuit. They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to put him in jail. And so Donald Trump recognized that the strategy of trying to work with the deep state, the strategy of trying to confront these guys head on, that's not going to work. So in the second term, he's changed his tact. Okay, his strategy is now, I'm going to give these guys all that they want. I'm going to do exactly what they tell me to do. Right? And so what the strategy here is actually interesting. Because in China, there's a strategy that managers use to destroy people who threaten them. And it's called Peng Sha in Chinese. But the idea of this is you flatter someone to death, right? So in the Greek world, the worst thing is the idea of hubris. So who the gods want to destroy, they first make proud, right? And what that means is you put your enemies on a pedestal. You give them whatever they want. you shine a spotlight on them. And then, first of all, whatever happens is going to blow up in their face, but also they get all the blame for it. Whereas before, in the first term, it was Donald Trump that got all the blame for everything that happened, right? So I will give an example. Everyone thinks that Jared Kushner is the puppet master, right? He's the one who is manipulating things behind the scenes. He's the one who's actually controlling Middle East policy in America. And the evidence is he goes to Ukraine and negotiates with Putin on a peace deal. He goes to Gaza to negotiate the peace deal there. He creates a board of peace. And he goes to Iran to negotiate a peace deal. Why is this guy, who's not even a government employee, involved in the most high-stakes political negotiations for America? Him and his buddy Steve Witkoff, right? And so everyone just says, well, Jared Kushner is the one who's controlling Donald Trump. But let me ask you this question. If you were the true puppet master, would you put yourself on stage? Would you have that spotlight shone on you so that if something goes wrong, everyone blames you? Everyone now thinks if this war in Iran goes sideways, it's Jared Kushner's fault. If this war in Ukraine explodes, it's Jared Kushner's fault. If things don't work out in Israel, it's Jared Kushner's fault. It was never Donald Trump, it was Jared Kushner. And so that's what Donald Trump is doing this term. He is letting his enemies get on stage and make complete jackasses of themselves, right? So when you're like, wait, Jared Kushner is Trump's son-in-law. They're not enemies. Yes, they are. If you know Donald Trump's personality, he values one thing and one thing only: loyalty. Jared Kushner is not loyal to Donald Trump, and we know because after January 6th, when everyone was distancing himself or herself from Donald Trump, Jared Kushner and Ivanka disappeared. Okay? Just go back to that time when Trump's cabinet was quitting on him, when the Republicans were calling for his impeachment. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, who made a lot of money in Trump's first term, they disappeared because they didn't want to lose their friends. They didn't want to be associated with the dumpster fire that was Donald Trump. Do you think that Donald Trump might have a grudge against Jared Kushner?
That would make sense to me.
I would think so. And do you think Donald Trump is a guy to like just go? Do you think that he's like, well, you know, yeah, he betrayed me, but at the same time, he's still my son-in-law, and, you know, he's the father of my grandchildren, and he's a husband to my favorite daughter, Ivanka. No, he's like, screw this guy. First of all, he stole my daughter from me. Second of all, he made her convert to Judaism. What is that crap? And third of all, when I needed him the most, he ran away.
Yeah, it's really hard to keep track of where all of your money's going. Like, have you ever thought about how many different software subscriptions?
What motivates him? And he is a reality TV star. He spent all of his life in the tabloids, right? And being in the tabloids means that you're just constantly curating, manufacturing your image in the public. So in the 80s, his image was that of a billionaire playboy, right? So he's always with like these beautiful models. But the thing that people don't recognize about Donald Trump is he's very, very strategic, and he's very manipulative, and he's very deliberate in everything he does. And so I'll give you an example of that, okay? I didn't know this until I think 2 years ago. But I just found out that Donald Trump does not drink. He's never drunk. He refuses to touch alcohol. And that's kind of dissonance, right? Because you imagine, wow, you're a billionaire playboy, and you host like the most lavish parties in New York. You are dating supermodels, and you are hanging out with these celebrities. So you don't drink? So picture this, where, like it's a ballroom. You got 1,000 of the most beautiful, wealthiest people in America, and they're getting drunk, and they're doing drugs in the bathroom. And Donald Trump, he's the host. He's going around, and he's shaking hands, conversing with people, taking pictures, but he's not drinking. What kind of man does that? Why would he do that? So my own interpretation is that Donald Trump, he's deliberate, okay? He's been planning this for a long time. If you go back to the late 80s, early 90s, and like this guy's going to like this Republican National Convention, Democratic National Convention, he's talking to CNN, he's saying like, you know what? I should run for president. And if I ran, I would win. Okay, so people don't really appreciate this about Donald Trump, right? So that's the first point I make. Second point I would make is, everyone thinks Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. But my question is this: if he were in the Epstein files, wouldn't Joe Biden and his Attorney General, Merrick Garland, wouldn't they have exposed this during the 4 years they were in office, when they had access to all the Epstein files? And people also forget that Donald Trump is hated by the elite. He was hated by Jeffrey Epstein. Why? Because he didn't play by their rules. He wasn't part of the club, right? So you look at all these people who are flying to Epstein Island: Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Larry Summers, Steven Pinker. Okay, just the most elite in politics, in finance, and in academia. And Donald Trump, maybe he did go, but he wasn't part of that club, right? So Donald Trump was an outsider for most of his life. Like, look, if you go back to the 80s, and you were to survey like the most powerful man in New York City, okay? The people who actually ran New York City. Every one of them would say, Donald Trump, this guy's a clown. He's a clown. He's stupid. He's useless. He's bankrupt. It's just his dad's money, okay? He's playing with his dad's money. So Donald Trump has always been an outsider. He's always felt persecuted. So I would just put everything together, okay? This guy has been planning something since the 80s. He's very deliberate. He's very disciplined. He's not part of the elite the way that it's traditionally understood. If he were, he'd be best friends with like the Clintons and the Obamas, and no one would oppose him in 2016 when he became president. People forget that in 2016, when he was president and he had this inauguration, no one went. Because like no one wanted to be associated with this guy, even though he was president of the United States. And the media mocked him every single day. And people forget this, but in 2016, the big thing was Russiagate, where Donald Trump was clearly an agent of Russia. Putin had blackmail on him, and Putin put him in office. And that was the idea of Russiagate. And that was something that the mainstream media promoted every single day. And it turned out to be a nothing burger, because Robert Mueller did an investigation. And if you just looked at the Mueller report, he just said it very clearly in the report: there's no evidence at all linking Donald Trump and his family to Vladimir Putin. And I would say the same thing about Jeffrey Epstein, where I'm sure that Merrick Garland had a huge team looking for anything that could incriminate Donald Trump. There was nothing in the Epstein files. So this is a guy who associates with like the most perverted, the sleaziest people on the planet Earth, but he himself is not implicated in whatever they do. That's really strange. All right, so all I'm saying is that I think Donald Trump is much more deliberate, much more methodical, much more strategic than people give him credit for. The issue, though, is what does he want? Okay, so that's the second part of the question. What does he really want? And Americans think that, Donald Trump, he's corrupt. He wants to be the richest man in America. And that doesn't really hold water, because if he wants to be the richest man in America, why is he pissing everyone off like this, right? Why doesn't he just sell himself out to these secret societies, these billionaires? Why antagonize them the way he's done?